Welcome to All Home Care Matters, the show where we discuss all things home care, with discussions on important age-related matters and topics. Brought to you by Enriched Life Home Care Services, the #1 rated home care provider in Michigan by Top Rated Local.
Hello, and welcome back to All Home Care Matters. If this is your first time visiting us here at the show, we want to say thank you for taking time out to be with us today. We appreciate how valuable everyone's time is, and that's why we try and make each episode here at All Home Care Matters something that will hopefully matter to you. Today, we are honored to welcome a remarkable guest, Dr. DeLon Canterbury, the founder of Geriatric. Welcome, Dr. DeLon. How are you today?
I'm doing perfect. How are you doing? It's a great day in the life of deprescribing.
Wonderful. We're doing good, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I want to start a little with your backstory, though. I know you left a six-figure job, and you're always doing these wonderful live events and events on LinkedIn and other locations. What got you so passionate and involved with pharmaceuticals and, your deprescribing?
Yeah, no, for sure. So for me, I came from the wonderful world of retail pharmacy. Shout out to our community pharmacists out there. And, working in Henderson, North Carolina, we had a higher demographic of older adults. And I quickly learned that they were the ones that had the most issues with their medications. I found there were tons of drug interactions. There were social barriers like transportation, food insecurities. And at the end of the day, I realized how little I actually knew about geriatric medicine and the management of that from a pharmacist lens. So after seeing all of these people come with these interactions, these side effects, I decided to learn more about senior care. And so I got a board certification in geriatric pharmacotherapy. And that opened my eyes to how little we're actually helping some of our older adults when it comes to filling these medications left and right. And so it was kind of the dark side of retail where I got burned out, angry, super depressed with what I was doing. And I felt there had to be a better way to holistically help our older adults, our aging adults. And so even beyond that, what really hit home for me was seeing my parents as caregivers struggle with managing my grandmother's medicines. And so she was in a nursing home, unfortunately, was prescribed an inappropriate antipsychotic, and I wasn't a pharmacist yet. But they eventually had to move her out of that nursing home from New York down to Atlanta to take care of her because her dementia just spiraled out of control.
Wow.
So it took us 4 months, Lance, to figure out that it was just one prescription that masked these signs of dementia. It was one inappropriate med. And that was like the fire behind why I do what I do today is why are we paying these facilities to not give us the best quality care? And
Right.
so all of this could have been avoided had someone like a pharmacist look at the meds, identify that there was a problem with her dementia and irritability and wandering and sundowning, had we just thought and took that extra effort that pharmacists have. So that's what I aim to do. And my grandmother was able to be saved by a retail pharmacist and live to see 90. And that's the inspiration behind me and my company.
That's wonderful, DeLon. And I want to kind of piggyback off that just for a brief moment. When you say, just the one medication, I'm looking, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers and listeners have had an experience, maybe not like that, but where, there was a, contraindicated med or, whatever, and you're going to several different specialists, several different doctors, and they may not all be on the same page. Where do you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and if you don't want to answer it, that's okay. But when you look back at that situation now with your professional experience and background, was it the doctor that failed her by writing that script and not catching it, or is that the pharmacist's job to catch it? Kind of like the chicken or the egg.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question, and to be frank, it's a systemic issue. It's a systems-wide issue, right? In the world of particularly here dementia in this case, the doctor doesn't always have the best options in the tool belt, right? So I can't fully put the onus on the doctor. However, in this situation specifically,
Right.
there's an FDA black box warning that says do not use this medication in patients who have dementia. That is a known fact. That's especially since 2008 when they started cracking down on this basically over sedation for people who have dementia to manage them, which really is just silencing them, right? So in this case, I would say, this would be maybe the doctor's fault, but he has the autonomy to choose what he made. And so the pharmacist, when especially from someone who's been in those positions, you're not going to have all that information, right? You just see a script, it may be new. You may not know there's other issues because you know how it is in a pharmacy. You have any questions? Yes, no. All right, good. I'll see you later. And so the pharmacist may not even know that the patient's dealing with that unless they're having a one-on-one, intimate, empathy-based conversation. But again, that's why it took 4 months of
Right.
frustration. And finally, my mom said something at the counter to flag the pharmacist to intervene. And eventually, it was that pharmacist who advocated for us to get it stopped. So here, for a more philosophical answer,
Yeah.
it's a systems issue, right?
Right.
It's ubiquitous. It's not just this one off, but also, I mean, we all have a role to play, both pharmacists and prescriber.
And I think the patients and families have a role. Ask those
Yeah.
questions. Don't be afraid. Don't get that, white coat syndrome, if you will, and make
Right.
them answer your questions. So that thank you for answering that. So
Mhm.
you founded and created Geriatrics, which, you're
Yeah.
doing tremendous work. And your big thing is, and we've talked about it, is deprescribing. Walk our viewers and
Yeah.
listeners through what deprescribing means.
Absolutely, absolutely. So deprescribing is the supervised tapering or withdrawal of medications that are maybe no longer necessary or needed for a patient. So we're never telling anyone to just stop cold turkey, but it's a frank discussion around, do I need all of these medications now? And particularly in older adults, they tend to have the highest risk of drug interactions, of side effects, falls, cognitive impairment, constipation, you can name it. And so having more prescriptions on your med list increases the risk of all those things I've mentioned. So what deprescribing is doing is reframing our normal approach to care, where instead of we just keep adding more and more meds, we look at it methodically and look for opportunities to say, is this completely necessary for you to live the next 20 years? And is it important for you to live? And if those meds don't fit that quality or category, then that's an opportunity to say, hey, doc, what can we do to taper off all of this? What can we do to deprescribe? And do it in a way where we're not putting the patient in harm's way.
Okay. And what would you say is the main goal or objective of deprescribing? Is it for healthy aging, or why is deprescribing for healthy aging?
Yeah, it's goes hand in hand with healthy aging. It relieves the burden on the caregiver who's trying to force feed their loved one all these pills. But more importantly, here, we want to make sure we're not doing more harm than good. Like the first law of health is like do no harm, right? Our Hippocratic oath. So if we are inadvertently just keeping adding pills onto these lists without questioning the actual evidence and benefits, then we can put people in harm's way. So deep prescribing is not only a piece of value-based care where we're looking at those quality metrics, but it's again been shown to show cost savings, right? Improve quality of health, increase peace of mind. Like we have more autonomy, quality aging, like you say, independence. We want to keep people out of the hospital, right? The hospitals don't want to see you guys. They may want the money, but they are flooded. And unfortunately, we don't have enough specialists in the geriatric realm to take care of them. So the more we can keep people staying at home, playing with their grandbabies, having fun, the better for the entire health system and for me as a deep prescribing pharmacist.
Right. I want to talk about the families and the caregivers, because if they're taking care of a person and they're their POA, or, they're their advocate, or they're just their primary care provider, or just, taking care of their loved one, how can they help to de-prescribe for their loved one?
Yeah, no, it's an excellent question, and it's something we religiously teach in our communities, our churches, our live webinars on the red pill versus the blue pill. But one of the first things that I tell my patients and clients to advocate for is, first look at the med list. We got to know what you're taking, and it needs to be up to date. It needs to be accurate. So make a list of every single prescription they're on and every single over-the-counter herbal supplement, eye drops, medicated lotions, you name it. Every single thing needs to be on this list. Okay. And once we have an idea of what all they're taking, you want to start counting. All right. Are they on more than five medications? We in our world define someone who may be on more than five medications as having polypharmacy, which can
Hmm.
basically mean, hey, your increased risk of some of those harms we mentioned is heightened. So, is your loved one on more than five meds? Okay, that's a first conversation that you want to have with your doctor. Say, hey, doc, this is a known fact. If you're on more than five meds and it increases if it's 10, 15, etc., then we know there's an increased risk of harm. Okay. That's the first conversation. Two, you want to go through each and every med and ask, what is the timeline for this medication? You see, we think we have to be on something forever and ever, but are we asking and empowering ourselves to maybe use, nutrition as a way to substitute a pill, or mindfulness, or exercise, or maybe combining three pills into one? Can we consolidate? Can we downsize? The less the pill burden, the known risk we have seen in clinical practice reduce. Okay. So going through that deep list and just working with your pharmacist, working with your provider, and doing a med review. And I don't mean just a medication checklist, like, are you still taking this? Like, no, go through the why, the when, what is it for, and have a full understanding of what you're taking. If you don't even know what you're taking, then my friend, you may not need it. Like, I'm not going to say based on literacy, but if you've been on something for 20 years and you don't even know why you're on it, that again is a conversation for me to speak up and say, hey, do you still need it? Maybe not.
Do you get a lot of pushback from the health community or big pharma, if you will, because you're kind of, you're out there preaching the gospel about why you don't have to live on these medications, and you may be getting over medicated or taking things you no longer need, but that takes money out of the pockets of big pharma and healthcare, right?
Yeah.
Is
I
that
mean,
fair?
it could. I mean, to be frank, I feel like where I'm at may not be on their billionaire radar yet. But that's okay. I want this to raise people's hairs. I want people to feel uncomfortable when I talk about this. And so I don't really get pushback. The people who hire me are in urgent and dire need. And generally, when I come in, it's a crisis, and I'm able to navigate something that most providers are not trained on, which is deprescribing. And frankly, physicians are one of the biggest supporters of pharmacists who help them with this because
Okay.
honestly, they're not trained in the medications like we are. So we're able to save their butts. We save each other. We work together. But ultimately, bring it, big pharma. That this is the point. Like, the point is, like, I'm not necessarily saying it's all pharma's fault either.
Sure.
I'm simply saying if we're going to keep knee-jerk reacting, and you know how many people are increasing in that demographic of people 65 and up, we're going to have tons of people that are on 20, 30 meds, and no one's specialized to look for harm reduction. And so we end up paying as taxpayers because now they're being sent to the ER.
Right.
And unfortunately, we know 275,000 people die every year from preventable medication errors. So again, the proof is there. I'm not preaching anything necessarily new, and this is something that pharmacists love to do. We just don't always have the autonomy and the setting to do it, which is why I decided to leave that world and do my own prescribing company.
And maybe you can't answer this now, and maybe it's, a wish or a goal of geriatrics and, your mission and work that you're doing. Do you see this deprescribing as something in the future down the road where your local, retail pharmacies, the chains, we won't mention names, they start having like a consultation, ask your pharmacist about deprescribing. Do you see that as a reality in the future?
Yeah, it's happening now.
Oh, it is. Okay.
It's happening now. We, as a part of our company with Geriatrics, we've created this prescribing accelerator. So we coach pharmacists, nurses, clinicians to do what you just say. In fact, one of our alumni has a community facing deprescribing clinic. She literally called it that. And she gets referrals from long-term care companies that are more complex. They go to her and they work with a plan to deprescribe.
Wow,
So
wonderful.
I do see deprescribing as a revenue generating service in the community setting. But frankly, it's going to be necessary. Like it's people are getting dinged. Like we know from these nursing homes that are putting on fake diagnosis codes for bipolar and schizophrenia so that they can inadvertently use those antipsychotics.
Right.
That's a huge issue. And so the FDA is cracking down, CMS is cracking down on that, and they're going to start taking away people's star ratings. So deprescribing is already becoming a quality metric that's tracked by health systems. For instance, with benzodiazepines like Xanax, clonazepam, they're now looking for ways if health systems are having a dose reduction when people may have had an incident like a fall in the year prior. So there are catching on, like from a quality standpoint. So the future is now, and the truth is, more and more people are over medicated. And it's not just here, it's across the
Oh,
entire
right.
world.
Right. How does the aging care businesses work with you as a pharmacist in the deprescribing program, and lay that out for us, because we have a lot of business owners and professionals that watch, and I can see them saying, this sounds like this could be very beneficial to my patients, to my clients. How does it work?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it's all a digital course. We created a 12-week crash course on deprescribing, and we cover everything from catching the common geriatric side effects, understanding how to use genetic testing as a revenue stream, talking about opportunities for those health conditions that are associated with polypharmacy and overprescribing. We give people the literal cheat code on what a deprescribing pharmacist would use in practice. The best part is it's all CE accredited. So people who complete this course get 15 hours of CEs. If you're a doctor, a PA, a nurse, a social worker, or a pharmacist, you will qualify and be eligible to get credit. And we do it all virtually. So you can literally just look up Deprescribing Accelerator and there'll be a page for you to apply. But this is intended for businesses. So we want businesses who are looking to future-proof themselves and leverage that pharmacist expertise, but make it in a way where it's easy to understand and easy to sustainably implement within just a few weeks.
That's wonderful. So when somebody goes through and becomes deprescribed, I'm thinking the patient, right, or the elderly loved one. What what happens after they become deprescribed?
A lot of times, caregivers describe it as seeing like a light bulb came on, like they get their lives back. One of our hallmark cases, we had a patient who had a lot of cognitive impairment and constipation, dry mouth, and dehydration. And well, with our deprescribing process, mind you, Lance, she was on 36 medications.
Wow.
Okay. 36. And it took us a couple of months, but we got her down to 8 after a few months. All right. So she was able to remember where she was. She was able to see and recognize her grandbabies. She was able to leave the house and not just sleep all day. She got that quality of life back, you know? She got that autonomy back of her own health, you know? And that's just one case. We have another patient who's had falls religiously, and they also have a cognitive impairment. So balancing this medication to help with some of those anxieties to reduce that because it increased the falls risk, help them walk more. And I mean, it could be as simple as walking more to the kitchen from the bathroom and not feeling afraid to get up in the middle of the night. So these little metrics are soft quality of life improvements that the caregiver gets a breath of fresh air from. But also, of course, our older adults can now have that autonomy and that peace of mind because they're on the least amount of meds that may cause the most amount of harm.
That's wonderful. What are some of the clinical tools that we can use to deprescribe? If somebody's
Yeah,
looking
that's
at
a
their
great
mom or
question.
their dad, and they're
Uh-huh.
like, Dad, you're taking 20 pills a day. Dad
Yeah.
doesn't have any idea why. Family doesn't know why. Like, what are some of the tools they could use?
Yeah, a lot of the tools out there tend to be more clinical focused, but frankly, if you're seeing these medication lists, the easiest tool would be calling up and just having a frank conversation with a pharmacist. Like we may not all be geriatric trained, but we still have an eye for looking for what may be causing what. So an easy thing is having a deep dive of those meds. And I generally recommend an independent pharmacy as they tend to give more of that holistic care and personal touch, but talk to them first. Now, if you're just at home on the internet trying to figure out what's going on, um, I would recommend checking out the beers list. That's one of my favorites to cite. And essentially, it's a list of potentially inappropriate medications, about 200, 300 meds on there. And I would just do a search and see if your loved ones have any meds that are in that list. And then it tells you which side effects may happen if they're on it. So basically work backwards and say, hey, mom has had more bloating or, bleeds in her stool. I wonder if one of these meds may be causing that. And so another key piece is also doing a drug interaction check. So drugs.com has a free drug interaction tool checker. Definitely check that out. But I would say probably the easiest thing, which actually has patient handouts and videos and awesome toolkits, would be checking out deprescribing.org. Deprescribing.org actually gives you the guidelines on the top medications that are basically targeted for deprescribing, based out of Canada, but we have our own deprescribing network here. But they use the same guidelines. They look at certain acid reflux medications, certain antipsychotics and dementia, maybe even want to stop certain dementia meds, as well as like benzodiazepines like the Xanax, that really increase falls risk. So awesome tools are out.
That's great, Delon. And I also want to point out we're going to have your website up on the screen as well. It's geriatrics.org. There's a lot of good information on there. We'll have all your social media and your YouTube channel also in the show notes and up on the screen. But I want to go back to testing and deprescribing. How are genetic testing? How is that playing a role now in either modern healthcare or just in pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, I love it. So genetic testing really seemed so far away 20 years ago, but it's been around. And at that time, it was super expensive, so cost prohibitive. People didn't really do it. We've advanced so much now that it's readily accessible. You're probably getting spammed in your email about genetic testing here and there, everywhere if you're older. So it's so important though, because we, unfortunately, in our medical system, kind of just do a trial and error approach where if you scrape your knee and I scrape my knee, we all get the same thing, right? That's just how clinical guidelines work. Where now medicine, we're able to basically test your body, your genes, with a simple cheek swab, non-invasive, and it can tell us before we give you that medicine if that medication may actually do more harm or more good or won't even work. And it's not going to work for all meds. However, there are a lot of medications that are cleared differently. So people with different ethnicities, backgrounds, and heritages, they can have different responses and risk factors. For instance, clopidogrel or Plavix, really common blood thinner, right? A lot of people who have a heart attack or stroke are put on a blood thinner called clopidogrel or Plavix. But little do people know that if you're of Asian ancestry or Pacific Islander, you have almost a 30% risk of being able to not break that drug down. And what that means is you may have another heart attack or stroke because you're not getting the real purpose of the drug in your body. And so that's where precision medicine or genetic testing, pharmacogenomics, all those words essentially mean about the same thing. We're using your body to precisely treat you without using the traditional, oh, everyone gets this and let's see if it works. And it doesn't because, 30% will have success, 30% will have nothing, smaller percent will have a rare fatal side effect. And that's just a general breakdown of people. So we're just avoiding that whole 3 months of waiting or to get a response where we can do it now with a simple cheek swab.
That's wonderful. I want to wrap up here. And again, thank you for your time. I know how busy you are speaking and leading the charge here in deprescribing. But I want to go back to DeLon, we'll say 20 years ago, maybe 25, when you were watching your grandmother have all this horrible interactions with this, black box, black label medication to where you're at today. What would you go back and tell yourself back then?
For me, just being here today, this has been a transformative process. Back then, I was super shy. I didn't believe in myself, wasn't talkative. I didn't know how to speak up for myself, let alone things I believed in. So it took another decade or so to really get comfortable in my own skin. So I would tell myself to just own my greatness now instead of waiting for permission to live the life I was destined to live.
Mhm.
You know, that's what I would tell myself is to just have a bit more confidence and a bit more, um, I guess, ownership of my gifts
Mhm.
in a way, because I just didn't think I had gifts. So now that I'm, having TED Talks and coaching people and driving businesses to implement this, I'm seeing that I've missed out maybe on my greatness in the past life. So that's what I would say is to just be more confident and have a bit more patience and grace with myself.
Um,
Enjoy the ride.
it's a great answer. I think that's advice everybody could live by. And last question would be, well, maybe two more, DeLon. What is the greatest piece of feedback that you've received since you started this mission on deprescribing? Is there any one particular moment where you're like, you know what, this is happening, or I'm making a difference? Is there one that really sticks out to you?
Yeah, yeah. When I go around and speak at conferences and meet so many awesome people in this aging space, many of them respond with, "Oh my gosh, where were you when I had XYZ? My dad, my uncle 5 years ago passed, and I knew he had 20 meds, but I didn't know how to approach it." So a lot of people give me the "I wish you were here, a couple of years ago" response, but the moment for me was actually that very same patient who had 36 prescriptions on board. The other side to that story is that her family were actually fighting over how to take care of that loved one. And the daughter who hired me, her caregiver, felt she was over medicated. But the rest of her family didn't care. In fact, they wanted to force her into a nursing home involuntarily so that they could seize her wealth and her assets and her riches. So they actually ended up hiring me, the caregiver, to present my medical testimony of why I believe we need to deprescribe and created an action plan. And here's what's causing the harm to what. And we were able, Lance, to literally convince a jury of our peers to completely drop this case.
Wow.
So we won the case of their family trying to force her into a nursing home to seize those riches. And well, that was the day I got a call, and she teared up like, "We won, DeLon, we won. Like you helped us. Like you made us like save so much money. Like we kept her out of a nursing home." So that happened 4 years ago.
Wow.
We would have saved them well over $500,000 on cost because she would have been in a memory care unit, and we all know how expensive that is. Um, but that was the moment that defined that this was my calling, and that was the first 4 months of business. So that still today reigns true.
That's a great story. One, I just imagine, like ourselves with our company, you get a lot of great feedback messages, hugs, and, thank yous, but it's the ones you don't get that you may never even know about, and,
Mm.
just I applaud you for the tremendous work you're doing at Geriatrics and your advocacy. So, last question. As I know, you're from North Carolina.
Yeah.
MJ or LeBron, DeLon?
Come on. Come on, bro. I'm not a Bronny fan.
Thank you. Just say
I'm
MJ and it's
just
all
not.
done. Just
I'm
say
just
MJ.
not.
We're
So it's
good.
gonna be MJ all
Yes.
day.
He is the
So
true GOAT.
there's that. I mean, come on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tar Heel Nation, man. That's how it is. And that's how it is.
There you go. Well, Dr. DeLon Canterbury, founder of Geriatrics and Deprescribing, we appreciate your time today, your friendship, and look forward to having you back on in the future.
Most definitely. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, DeLon. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Hi, I just wanted to give a little bit of information about our experience. It has been a wonderful experience. What was so amazing to me was that we had physicians that were not following up with other doctors. Some doctors were prescribing certain very similar medicine, but when we got in contact with you all, I saw a tremendous difference. We went from several medications, it was like 30, to typically around, I want to say about 7 or 8. So I do recommend this this type of a surge in anyone's life. I feel that you are very knowledgeable. You took the time to not only give us that passionate feeling that of warmth, but you gave us the insight of what every medicine minutes, that one-on-one really has made a big difference in our lives. And we say this respectfully. Thank you for what you do, and God bless you.
Thank you for joining us today here at All Home Care Matters. All Home Care Matters is here to help families as they navigate these long-term care issues. We invite you to visit us at allhomecarematters.com, where there's a private, secure, fillable form where you can give us feedback, show ideas, or if you have questions. Every form is read and responded to. And remember, you can listen to the show on any of your favorite podcast streaming platforms or watch the show on our official YouTube channel. Just make sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. We'd also like to say thank you again to Dr. DeLon Canterbury. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you next time here at All Home Care Matters.
Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to you joining us again on another episode of All Home Care Matters. To learn more about the show and to connect with us, visit us at allhomecarematters.com.